Jesus blesses all children, everywhere. He invites them to come in. He does not say shoo them away, right? Well, there were these two brothers in Milwaukee, Pat and Mike, ages 11 and 9. And they lived in I guess you'd call it a blue-collar neighborhood in Milwaukee. And they were rascals. They really were. They got into a little bit of trouble now and again. Even a little petty shoplifting, which is terrible. Usually just pulling pranks and stuff. Smart kids, not mean-spirited, but really, really a handful. And the mother and father were pretty well fit to be tied, and the neighborhood certainly fully were aware of Pat and Mike's pranks. One day, the mother finally reached out to her next-door neighbor, and she said, well, you know Pat and Mike. And he said, yeah, we got it. And she said to her neighbor, she said, I don't know what to do. And so the neighbor says, well, there's this pastor 2 blocks away in the church, the Presbyterian church, just 2 blocks away. He is really, really good with settling children that are a little bit disruptive. So you might want to talk to him. So she says, great, I'll do it. She calls the pastor up and she explains the situation. And the pastor said, yeah, I think I can help you, for sure. What I'd like you to do is just send one boy at a time. And I have an opening tomorrow at 10 a.m. in my office, so if one of the guys can show up. And she said, okay, I'm going to send Pat. He's the oldest. And so the next day comes, Pat goes into the pastor's office, and he sits down, and the pastor looks at Pat, and he stares at him, and he says, Pat, where is God? Pat doesn't know what to say. So the pastor says it again. Where is God? Now Pat's getting really restless and uncomfortable, and he says it a third time. Where is God, Pat? And Pat jumps up out of his seat. He runs out of the church. He runs right to home. He goes up the stairs. He runs up into his bedroom. And as he's running up, Mike, who's reading a comic book, is looking at this. And he goes upstairs to talk to Pat. And he says, Pat, what in the world happened? And Pat said, they now think we stole God. Well, cursing or blessing children. Jesus says, don't push these kids away. They are at the center of God's kingdom. All children. Do not push children away. And one thing that we know is that God does work through people. So God is expecting us to be his hands and feet, to welcome children into this life and to help them become all that they can be, right? Now, Jesus expects this of his disciples. He expects his disciples to open their arms and never, ever, under any circumstance, push a child away. Now, looking at our political rhetoric, and thinking about this idea of little children who become the foundation of everything that follows, it seems like our agendas focus more on economic development over human development. We do not put children first in this society. I'll give you an example. And this is a big error of omission in the public agenda. Over the last 40 years, we have seen a radical decrease in the number of guidance counselors in schools. Radical over the time. And what happens, and the reason this happens, is because those who set budgets up say there's not enough money, so we're going to reduce the number of guidance counselors in favor of more technology, STEM and STEAM, and whatever all this stuff is going on. And so what happens is, through a lack of essential guidance counseling, lots of problems that could be identified and attended to are not, in favor of something else. The ratio, the gold standard, is 1 to 250. If a guidance counselor has 250 students, he or she can vet them out easily in the first month of school, identify the needs that each child has that has needs. Usually, let's say 40 or 50 will end up needing the special attention, and can easily case manage that stuff out. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And so what does happen is children that have real needs go unattended, generally, end up in the classroom, disrupt the classroom to such an extent that the teacher becomes more of a traffic cop than an educator. Further outcomes over time: more dropouts, more crime, more everything. All that could be relatively solved or greatly mitigated if only we would address this situation and make sure and mandate that these positions are in place with a methodology to help kids and get on top of things. But you see, we don't value kids that way. A very simple systemic solution is not being addressed or talked about. As Christians, we see the admonition to welcome all children, to help all children, to help a child achieve his or her potential, to celebrate this life. We should demand this sort of thing. I don't know how many teachers who would disagree with that. It's a problem. It's not on the agenda. We forget sometimes that people are not just about what they do, it's about who they are. Unique, special, gifted and broken, with many, many challenges. Now, thinking about another issue, and I brought this up yesterday, but I feel I need to bring it up again, because it is it's foundational to the good news and how we open our hearts and minds to the world around us. I'm going back to immigration, okay? I'm inviting us to think about it theologically for a moment. 52% of our country favors mass deportation. Mass deportation of people who have fled, 98% of them, desperate situations, moving into families that are already there ahead of them, that have fled years before, trying to find and culture some semblance of a life. Children whose parents would like nothing more for their children to achieve their potential. We, the richest nation in the world, who is able to feed the world 2 times over every year if we have a mind to, have chosen to demonize these folks, wrapped around laws that maybe need to be refreshed. What would Jesus say about mass deportation? Think about it. Are the challenges really that great, folks? Particularly when we understand in this economy that you've created that all immigrants are net positive to the economy. In a nation that's so concerned about crime, immigrants have the lowest level of crime of any group of people in this country, by a long shot. Now, common sense would say that's so. If you're worried about getting kicked out, you're sure is not going to, you're going to think 3 times before you break the law. Now, Jesus says, welcome the little children. Do not push them away. That's an admonition. We could have done a lot better than this throughout this nation. I'm not sure where the church was in most of it. Our country, the country that we've inherited, we've inherited this. From the very beginning, my friends, has seen race as a determining factor in who gets in and who does not get in and who does whatever they're going to do. Race is a big issue. It has been a struggle from the very beginning. And as I said last week, there are 125 public acts and executive orders dealing with this issue over the last 200 years, color-coding life as we understand it. We classify people, don't we, as white. That's the melting pot, white, which means just Europe. We have American Indians, we have Native Hawaiians, we have Asian and Hispanic. And these are all categories of folk that have different stories of engagement in this country. And many of them are trying to struggle to get into the melting pot. If only I can figure out how to be white. Things have gotten better. But there still is this ugliness in our midst that would welcome people from Norway and Denmark, but people of brown skin, not so much. People are seen simply as units of production, and race is a driving force. Now, in the end, what I'm suggesting is to think theologically. What would Jesus do? How would Jesus see this stuff? To become educated as to how all this stuff unfolds. And there lies the challenge. My friends, it's not easy to stay focused on the peace. Because if we were focused on the peace, things would be infinitely different than they are today. But we're the next generation. It's our turn to do what we can and to help our children and grandchildren see a vision that is commensurate with the call of Jesus. We here today have a heart for this work. It's been sparked. We see these quilts that are going to go in a variety of different places. Heartbreaking situations and less so. Loving hands that have knit these things and prayed over these, and we're going to pray over them again. We are going to pray over the boxes of materials that are going to be sent to Lutheran World Relief. These are important steps. Our prayers of the church are significant and remind us every time we do public confession. See, this very specific challenge Jesus is providing us. And so, here we are. And as your pastor, my utmost concern is for your spiritual well-being. The love that is being cultivated in your heart for yourself, for your families, for the world. A love that can start to ask questions, that can raise us to a higher level of humanity. And we all have that potential. And I am looking right now at the good news. Amen.